morning. Welcome to our breakfast.
There it is. Would this qualify for Super Tuesday? No, that would have been yesterday.
Yeah, maybe.
Post-debate, hashtag post-debate things. Right? Yeah, so it's been a very interesting night yesterday.
Right. So let me get this straight, because it still qualifies a debate.
If it's one person.
Right. Have you decided?
I guess a car is still a car, whether it's a one passenger or two passengers, but Derek Bang.
I think you thought about this.
Derek has all the answers.
Yeah, yes, our news review panel will be going through that with Wahiga Maura in just a short while, but later on, your man cave.
His man cave will be
the Manu panel. I don't know why.
Manel.
Right.
Watch out for the feminists. And the man cave will be on today. We're going to be talking about exactly those guys who share.
Share what?
Share bear.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that the topic?
That's the topic.
Where'd you get that from?
Share bear.
Alright, so
that's the topic. I'm confused with the last. Yeah, the topic is actually, I think it's teenage pregnancy and sex.
Can you make up your mind
by
like 8 o'clock?
Because there's a lot of there is even a report that came out today, some in the newspaper. Teenagers are even refusing HIV testing.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about that. So parents, if you're watching, grab your teenagers. It'll make the conversation easier.
Right, so that's Man Cave. Later on this morning, you can tweet at Citizen TV Kenya and also use the hashtag Power Breakfast, our individual handles. Mine is at Joey_Mutengi.
Mine is at Willis Raburu, and also at Fred Indimuli, and also to Wahiga Maura, who will be driving the conversation that's coming up next, which is about the presidential debate one-man show.
Speaking of which, we have a clip that I want to play here. Maybe you can introduce that for us.
Yeah, well, this is a clip of for the main, I couldn't say the only one, because this time there were others as well who came, but NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga showed up for the debate. Of course, President Uhuru Kenyatta skipping the debate, and that part I will reserve my comments. Higgs will take us through that, but here's a clip of what happened yesterday.
Good evening from the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, Kwea in Karen, Nairobi. Welcome to the last of 2 editions of the Presidential Debate 2017. My name is Linus Kaikai of NTV.
And my name is Joe Ageo of KTN News. This debate has been organized by Debates Media Limited, a broad partnership of mainstream media houses comprising television, radio, newspapers, and online platforms.
The format, rules, and guidelines of this debate have been developed by the Debates Media Limited in keeping with the best international practice, and have also been aligned with the context of Kenya and Kenyans.
Now, these rules have been shared with all the 8 presidential campaign teams, and the rules prescribe that only presidential candidates duly nominated by their parties and cleared by the IEBC can take part in tonight's debate.
And as your moderators tonight, we shall be guiding discussions between the presidential candidates on selected topics that have also, as per regulations, been shared with the respective campaign teams. The questions are, however, our own and have not been shared with anyone.
Now, this debate is taking place in front of a selected audience that includes ordinary Kenyan voters. The audience will quietly follow the debate, no jeering or cheering, no clapping or any form of applause, except from a moment from now as we welcome the candidates on stage.
As prescribed by the format, the candidates for the debate must have attained 5% and above of the popularity ratings in any recognized recent opinion polls. And the only candidates placed by Ipsos and Infotrack above this threshold are President Uhuru Kenyatta of the Jubilee Party and Honorable Raila Odinga of the NASA coalition.
Now, both candidates have been duly invited for the debate, but at this hour, we only have present here NASA Coalition's candidate, Honorable Raila Odinga, whom we now welcome on stage.
Let us now put our hands together for Honorable Raila Odinga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Raila Odinga. Now, as we mentioned, we had duly invited the President, who is also the Jubilee presidential candidate for this year, and the half-hour wait was to try and give him ample time to get here if he was on his way. But as it is now, we shall begin the debate, and we'll start with my colleague Linus Kaikai.
Thank you, Honorable Raila Odinga, for turning up for the debate. You need no introduction, so we are going straight to the issues of this debate. Yesterday, opinion pollsters, specifically Ipsos and Infotrack, released their findings. And one of the findings down there was that a majority of Kenyans, according to Ipsos, 61% of Kenyans feel the country is headed in the wrong direction. Only 27%, according to Ipsos, of Kenyans think the country is headed in the right direction. Where do you belong, Mr. Odinga, 61% or 27%?
Joe, thank you very much. Allow me first to greet Kenyans. I know that very many Kenyans wanatazama mjadala wa siku huu kwenye uninga. Kunataka kuchukua fursa kuwasalimu na vile vile kuambia ya kwamba tumekuja hapa kama Wakenya kujadiliana juu ya shida ambayo imekumba Wakenya wote kwa jumla, na sio tu kuja kwa mambo ya upinzani, lakini kutafuta suluhu kwa yale shida ambayo inakumba sisi kama Wakenya yote. Karibuni na asanteni sana. Having said that, let me now come back to the opinion poll, Ipsos and Sinovate. Joe, don't just believe that it is the polls that we should be talking about. We're talking about the Kenyans themselves, how they feel. And I have traveled around this country over the last 1 month in the campaign, and Kenyans are hurting. Majority of Kenyans are hurting seriously. The cost of living has gone up very seriously. From the last time, from 2013 up to now where we are, the inflation rate has gone up 40% cumulatively. That is the cost of living 40%. But the average wage has only increased by 12%. And this is being felt by the people. Wherever you go, you are told about Unga. That's why we call it the Unga Revolution. You know that the price of the maize meal was 110. It is now 150, 180, sometimes 200. The price of sugar is nearly 200 per 2 kilograms. The price of milk, which used to be 36 shillings, is now 60 shillings. But they buy it from farmers at 35 shillings. So generally, the Kenyans are justified in feeling that the country is heading in the wrong direction. And the issue is unemployment, and that issue is corruption, which is actually hurting our economy. The runaway corruption, what we call mega corruption, the Jubilee government. This really is, in my view, the cause of dissatisfaction by the people of Kenya.
And Honorable Odinga, you're running for president for the 4th time, if I'm not wrong. And for the 4th time, you're running for the presidency of this country against the backdrop of very sad statistics, if Ipsos and Infotrack findings are to be believed, especially about the cost of living, corruption, and unemployment. What is your answers to these things, and why do you see yourself as the answer to these questions?
Yes, Joe, this is my 4th time running, correct? And as you know, that I lost once, in those other previous 3 elections. But I am running here because of my commitment to change this country. I represent change. The coalition that has chosen me as their candidate, the National Super Alliance Coalition, is a coalition that wants to bring change to our country. We think that we have a solution to the problems. For example, I mentioned the issue of mismanagement of our economy. That's the reason why you have got runaway inflation in the country. This government has borrowed, and they borrowed very expensively. They have run away from the concessional loans and have gone for commercial loans with actually no maturity rate.
And that is a snapshot of what took place last night at the presidential debate. Finally, after a lot of waiting, it took place. 8 presidential candidates were invited. Only 4 showed up. We'll be talking about why and all the details around that. Of course, there was the first tier, which started at about 5:30 p.m. and the second part, which kicked off at 8:30 p.m. And what you've been watching is NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga as he gave his opening statements there. As you notice again, he was alone because President Uhuru Kenyatta did not show up. We'll also be talking about that. And to help me take a look at the communication styles and the politics in yesterday's presidential debate, I am joined by my panel in studio. So glad to have them here with me bright and early this morning. And I'll start on my immediate right, Joe Otin, Chief Executive Officer, The Collective, Chairman, Advertising Standards Board. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I'd also like to introduce Wangoi Keely, Lead Speech Coach. Wow, tongue twister there. Also welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
On my immediate left, Odoyo Owidi, a political analyst. He'll help us take a look at what political messages were taking place or were sent out last night by appearing or not showing up. And of course, on my immediate left, Derek Banga, communications consultant, strategic. All of you, once again, welcome to the program. Let's get straight into it. And from a communication perspective, and I'll start with you, Joe, what sort of messages do you think President Uhuru Kenyatta and NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga were sending by not showing up and by showing up? How would you categorize what happened last night?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. And I also just wanted to thank the media owners and the President Debate Company for hosting the show yesterday, because it really is a really important part of democracy. Now, debates, we see debates happening around the world. We see them happening in Europe, we see them happening in the US, and televised debates are not necessarily, they didn't start with televised debates. The first televised presidential debate was actually done in 1960, and that was between Vice President Nixon and Senator JFK. And you know, it was such an interesting debate because television worked for JFK. And one of the things you'll notice from that point on was that any presidential candidate that was able to use media and new media effectively generally tended to gain the upper hand. So in today's world, we find that before presidential debates in the US and in the UK, what tends to happen is presidential teams will try to bring down the expectations of their candidate, so that when he turns up and he performs reasonably well, he's seen to win.
Okay. In the eyes of the audience.
In the eyes of the audience.
Okay.
And it's really more about winning that presidential debate, because it'll then earn you perhaps a few percentage points in the opinion polls and eventually the votes. So the tactic that has been used by the Jubilee camp this time, and I think even the previous time, was the threat of not turning up, which was one of the ways of lowering expectations. In the previous election, Uhuru threatened not to turn up, and then he turned up unexpectedly. And that really boosted his performance during the debate. This time, he really called the bluff. He did the bluff, and he went truly ahead with it. But there's other things behind it in terms of lowering expectations for the entire campaign that I can talk about a little later on.
Okay, let me bring Derek in on this. Derek, do you think Raila's communication team, his handlers, achieved what they wanted to achieve last night?
Well, I have so much to say about this. You know, I watched that performance last night, and here is an opportunity for you
to get a distinct advantage over your opponent. Now, I remember the last time I was here last week, I talked about preparation being key. You know, there are two things about somebody who's up there in a debate, although this wasn't a debate. There is preparation and there's authenticity. I think Raila gets the authenticity part.
Okay.
When it comes to that, that is the Raila we know, that is Raila obviously a lot of people love. But this was an opportunity for him to, I think, give us something different. And when I say different, I'm talking about a different way of presenting the same old information. To me, if I'm looking at this from a communication standpoint and from a performance standpoint of a debate, I think that he didn't quite perform. In fact, he underwhelmed. In fact, if I was brutally honest, I would say he snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, because that was an opportunity for him to knock a killer point. Certainly, within that format, we call that format debate. I realize
some felt
I don't
did. Go ahead.
My viewpoint might be contentious, but I'm looking in terms of performance. I'm looking in terms of
communication.
I'm looking in terms of using certain sound bites. I'm looking in terms of being able to attack your opponent. Some of those things which are de rigueur for any debate. Although I keep saying it's not a debate, it was a monologue. So I feel that he didn't quite take advantage. Let me be kind. He didn't quite take advantage of that unique situation.
Okay. Wangui might disagree. I'm not sure. What was your take yesterday? How do you rate his performance? In terms of his communication style, his connection with the audience. In fact, some were saying that for a lot of the other candidates who appeared last night, they spoke to our minds. Did Raila speak to the mind, or did he speak to the heart?
Okay, first I think for me, the Honorable Prime Minister showed up. That was big. That was really a stroke of genius. He actually showed up, and he did not just show up, he held his own. However, two things for me that stood out. One was the fact that he couldn't quite get Linus Kaikai's name right.
Okay.
He called him Joe, not once, not twice, not 3 times.
Did you count?
About 5 times.
About 5 times.
And when Linus asked him, actually corrected him, he kept saying Joe. He said Joe at least 2 more times before he got it. That didn't sit well with me. And then separately, during the interview, I realized that he stuttered at least 3 times. There was a stutter. That I didn't see a lot of people raising that up, but that caused me a little bit of concern. I'll pick up a bit of what my two colleagues have talked about. Now, Joe talks about the 1960s debate, and at that time, I think one of the reasons why Nixon performed poorly was because he just had surgery. Actually, and he said he didn't want makeup on, so he was still in pain from his surgery. So that sort of really put him down, as opposed to Kennedy, who was all very photogenic
in his
and
element.
that sort of thing. On the other hand, Derek talks about the fact that that with Raila, he also did not, he didn't come from surgery, so we were expecting a bit of a better performance. But the depth also, this man has been in public office for how long? You were expecting substance. You were expecting him to turn the debate around. Not even, he has the power and authority to even turn around the questions that were asked to him and say, no, this and this and this is what happened. But you saw him sort of playing into, rushing into, like when I think Joe Aguero had asked him about the TJRC report. And he mangled that. He also really glossed over the land issue. I took issue with that, and I think the way he also communicated the 2/3 rule, considering that his party, as in at ODM, has been considered very pro-women, for lack of a better phrase, that was also one area that he failed to communicate. So he did great. He showed up. He had the stage, but I get the feeling he did not quite give us the punch that people were hoping for.
Okay, we're playing a clip of his parting shot, which I believe I hope my panelists here might be able to weigh in on that as well. But for Owidi, I'd like to know from you politically, what was the thinking behind Raila's team when they told him attend, and the thinking behind Uhuru's team, because there must have been consultation and discussions when they finally agreed we are not going?
these people have very serious teams, and if you know these two, you know Raila Odinga would be weaker in debate against Uhuru.
That's what you believe?
Not I believe, I know these people. That Uhuru cannot at this point in time stand public scrutiny. Because the most serious problems in Kenya today is tribalism and corruption. There are some questions that if a technical person asks him, he would not get an answer that would make the audience happy. Take for example the Sigiri Bridge built at 1.2 billion and the other one on the same river, the same size, built at 150 and the vehicles are passing. The other one did not even take a rat across. Such he would not answer. If at that point somebody decided to mischievously ask him how long it would take for the revenue from the SGR to repay it, it is 300 plus years, because right now the maximum we can get from that track up to Nairobi is about 1 billion a year. That would take 300 plus years. So these are the questions.
Sat down and did the math.
And then for Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, you remember initially they gave the impression that they would not come, but they are weighing. If we are going for a debate, Raila Odinga may not have to go. But if I am going to get the opportunity to campaign, I am going. That is why you remember in his intro, he used Kiswahili, because he knows he was speaking to Kenyans. He got an opportunity. Yes, he got an opportunity to speak to Kenyans. In fact, for me, his performance was the best the team could come out with, because for him, he is well known already. He was not going to impress anyone. Everybody knows Raila Odinga. They have seen him. They know what to even expect from him. In fact, he lowered what I expected him to do, because initially Raila Odinga, you know, is very cantankerous. He can be very loud, he can be very aggressive. Right. But those people prepared him for the debate. Well, he know that he was even prepared. He was told, Georgia is going to be there. It's going to be very difficult on you. This is how you're going to deal with it. Right.
You know, I understand. When you say he prepared, I don't think he prepared. In fact, I'm going to give a moniker here, and let me be the first to say this on TV. I'm going to call Raila what we call the impromptu iconoclast. Iconoclast means somebody who is constantly talking about change. Impromptu means not having prepared. Because I think Raila in his mind, and this is certainly how even his team, I think, would advise him this. You have been in this game forever. You know the issues. When it comes to the issues, when it comes to the policies, there was nothing up there that he wasn't able to answer. But a debate, I keep calling it a debate even though it wasn't a debate, is a specific type of format where you take those policies and you are now able to convert them so that a wider audience feels moved to change. I guarantee you, if there was a group of people who were brought, let's say a panel of Raila supporters, Jubilee supporters, and undecided, nobody would budge. The Jubilee supporters would still be firmly in the Jubilee camp. The Raila supporters would, of course, Raila Damu, and the undecided would not have moved because of that social media yesterday
was a bit different. But a few people, you know, sorry, Joe,
let's get into that, because you know, Ovidia, I like the direction you take, and you take one where you sort of really analyze the policies, you know, of and the challenges that Uhuru has. But you have to, one of the things you have to remember is that this debate had the potential to give both candidates about 23 million sets of eyeballs and ears
for a good 90 minutes
to tune in for 90 minutes. It's the biggest political stage that we're going to get in this particular election. So and politics is about optics and substance, and in this instance it was all about optics, and I think that 90 minutes Raila was able to get all the optics that he required. Now the challenge with this kind of thing, which from a debate it turns into a political monologue, is almost like a fight between Mayweather and Pacquiao. You know, and then only one of the opponents turns up. He runs into the ring, he does shadow boxing with himself for the entire 12 rounds, and then he lifts his hands up at the end. And you might say that yes, we did see the candidate in action, but that's not the fight that we wanted to watch.
Okay.
So I think for a lot of Kenyans, and what you may have seen on social media was true disappointment, because we were all gearing up to watch an entire debate where some of the issues would come up. Now, Derek brings up a really important point, which is the undecided voters. That most of these debates at this late stage in the political process is really for the undecideds, because the camps have already pretty much taken up their you know, the stalwarts have taken up their positions, and there might be some in those camps that might be trying to figure it out. This is really for them, and so you know, the debate performance, you can't have a debate performance, a really good debate performance, when your opponent isn't there.
So that's okay. Hold on there. Let's listen to Raila's parting shot, which many feel was one of the best that's been given in a debate, and then we'll carry on here. I'd like to hear from Wangoi how she, you know, how he finished, how he wound up what some are saying was a solo fight, although they would have hoped for a debate. Let's have shadow boxing actually. Let's have a listen to that real quick.
Finally, I just want to tell Kenyans that we are on the brink of history as a country. It has been a long journey to reach where we have reached today as a people. 8th of August is going to remain in the annals of our history as a very historic day for our people. Every Kenyan who is able, who is registered as a voter, must turn out to cast their vote to participate in history making. I'm sure that at the end of the day, Kenyans are going to emerge victorious. So we urge you, whether you're a Jubilee supporter, if you're a NASA supporter, turn up and vote for us, because Nane Nane will remain forever a very important day in your life. Thank you very much. Asanteni sana wa Kenya kwa kunisikiliza. Juta ya kwamba ndugu yangu Uhuru Kenyatta hakukuja. Ningependa sana akae pale, nieleze yale maneno yote, akisikia apate fursa ya kujibu, lakini ameniacha peke yangu. Ameniweka shere, lakini ndio ameweka boya hapa, lakini pamoja na haya mimi namtakia kila laheri na rafiki yake Bwana Ruto. Nawatakia laheri, nasema hiyo mchuano itakuwa ya kirafiki, na yule ambaye atashinda ashinde, na siyekubali kushindwa sio mshindani. Shukran, asanteni sana.
And that is how NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga wound up his 90 minutes alone, and he had the chance to speak to Kenyans about what he hoped to achieve should he take the ticket on the 8th of August. Let me look at some of the words he used. Important, historic. He said, he used a Kiswahili phrase at the end, talk about it's a game, anyone can win, and he who does not agree to lose is not a competitor, or isn't being fair. He also spoke about how his parting shot was about housing for low-cost housing, and a provision for widows, or ladies who have lost their husbands in one way or the other. How would you term that parting shot and how it resonated with the public?
Let me tell you what I heard. Gloating. He said, Rais Uhuru Kenyatta akae pale, na mimi niseme. He actually used it to sort of gloat, like, I showed up, I get to say, what's going on, and I get to sort of be the person that has the final word, as it were. I think he used quite a bit of sound bites, like something that would compel the heart. When he talks about, this is a game and this is what we're doing, he sort of used it to sort of relax those who were listening. But like my colleagues are saying, I'm not sure the needle moved, so to speak. But let me say this: even as I sort of look at his ending or parting shot, I think the Uhuru made a terrible mistake. I think they made a terrible mistake.
There's a pregnant pause in studio. Nobody's jumping in. Carry on.
They made the worst mistake that they could possibly. And I hear what Sawidi is saying, talking about the fact that he is a better debater than Prime Minister Raila Odinga. So, in essence, he has the team, he has the ability, and he has the capacity to be able to turn around the issue of corruption and the other issue that you're talking about that are really big issues: tribalism and corruption, and of course the high cost of living. his teams would have been able to take him through speaking points that he would have prepared for this. He would have been able to turn it around.
How do you turn around?
But let me address that specifically.
Yes.
Indeed, it was some would call a grave mistake. But if we go back into the American election and we look at how initially what seemed to be trying to lower the expectations for Donald Trump ended up lowering the expectations not just for the debate but for his entire presidency. When the women came out and accused him for certain acts, we knew he was going to lose that debate, right? But he came out fighting strong, and we also expected him to lose the election. But one of the things that it did was lower the expectations for his performance in the entire election, that it really mobilized his avid supporters. Now in this case, this particular act has really I've seen from what I was seeing on social media, so many people being terribly disappointed. The whole idea behind lowering expectations at this rate would be to get his real supporters to fear and to feel that any opportunity that they have to vote, any opportunity that they have to bring out and mobilize more supporters to come out and vote in big numbers is the only way that he is going to retain that seat.
But Joe, let me jump in.
It is lowering expectations, and I have to say it's been done beautifully.
I want to talk about something that you brought up. Turning around the conversation, and I want to give you an example. Because I have speech experts and communication experts in studio, I'm hoping you'll help me to see how that would happen. Let's talk about something like corruption. PricewaterhouseCoopers released a report, I think it's in April, about economic crimes. We are third in the world, I think behind France and South Africa. We are fourth most corrupt in East Africa, according to a different report. And I think globally in the TI rankings, we also are pretty high up or pretty low, depending on how you look at it, but we're not doing well. How do you turn around a question like that in a debate? Communication experts, go. Any of you, feel free to jump in. How do you turn around such a question?
Well, the first thing is to use the data that you have. As government, you have tremendous amounts of data to be able to show and bring evidence forward. So you'd obviously lean onto the data. Number two, you'd focus on key strategic points of things that you've been able to deliver through the particular time.
The rankings.
Despite the rankings, because at the end of the day, we have terrible rankings, but if you still look at the performance of the country, we're still a highly ranked nation in this region. We are the hub of East Africa, and that doesn't happen because no work is being done.
Okay.
So there are ways that you can certainly turn conversation like that around.
One of the ways is you take those numbers and statistics and you put them into context. You give us specific examples of how, and again, this is obviously if perhaps the president had showed up and he had been asked that particular question, and you perhaps take a specific case of how a particular corruption issue has been followed to its logical conclusion. That is what you do. In a debate like this, or when somebody asks you a question, even in an interview, put the numbers into context, the rankings, how we were, and you can compare and contrast, and there's different things that you can use, but you also use specific examples. It's not that there is not a single case of corruption in this country that has before. There are plenty, and those are the examples that you use to show people that, you know what, yes, we have some work to do, but here is a specific example of something that we have followed through in terms of fighting corruption. That is an easy question to answer. And again, if a team is sort of
an easy question to answer.
I mean, easy in terms of if you are, because you obviously have to be prepped for a question like that. You're going to be asked about corruption. You're going to be asked about joblessness. You're going to be asked. So what? And this is where I think, following on to what my two colleagues are saying, is that if you look at the Western world, debate prep plays such a prominence. People will halt their campaign for an entire week because it is so important to be able to answer these questions to that wider audience of 23 million people, which includes social media.
Okay, Owidi, before you come in, I also want to get the clip where Raila was asked about the cloud and where it's being housed, so I hope we can get that shortly. Owidi, come in.
Talking about turning around the questions, turning around, it is not possible to do it that easily. I said earlier that Uhuru would be faster with his words than Raila Odinga, and he would look like a better debater. Of course he is. But remember, in this game, some of the shots are fired by journalists who are very well prepared for this thing. And I'm sure these people had sat down and told, you may be better than Raila Odinga in firing your shots. But remember, there is Joe Agayo and Linus Kaikai. They can pin you to the wall. And you know Uhuru, he would lose it and bang the table if you push him to the wall. I know him. I've been with him here for long enough. So I think they said, instead of going there, so that the journalists help you lose to Raila Odinga, stay at home.
What if he felt that the rules were not fair? His team had raised objections that they were not involved in the planning.
Let me tell you, the rules cannot be unfair to one person and fair to the others. They are going to debate at the same place, same time, same journalists. So even if it is unfair for him, it will be unfair for Raila Odinga too.
It was Joe that actually raised this point, that this politics is perception. And let me tell you, his supporters felt let down yesterday. In fact, I saw someone saying, you know, it's awfully quiet in the Jubilee camp. People were disappointed. You could actually see that there was no activity on the timeline. They had no comeback.
They had no comeback. We take a short break. We have a comeback, and we'll be back to talk about some of the more outstanding statements made by NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga after this short break. You're watching the Power Breakfast Show live on Citizen TV.